the finance bill is going in for its second reading in Parliament today. Members of Parliament said they will do what? They will fill the House, and they're going to actually be ready to come and sit down and have a conversation about all of this. Easily for us to say that this is one of the times where the citizenry of the country is saying, you know what? This happened in 2023. We were not very happy with the results.
Well, we actually thought Parliament would do the thing and understand what the citizens were telling them, but clearly they did not fully understand what the citizenry was telling them.
No, they didn't, because it went ahead just as it was.
Willy-nilly.
So people are asking the question, this time around, are things going to happen just the way you've said? Treasury has said, please pass this thing as it is. There have been several pundits who've also said, you know what, it is needed to be able to run the country. These taxes, we need to add them here, here, and here. Kenyans are saying, you know what, we're not at the end of the rope. We are not getting to the end of our tether. The end of the rope ended a long time ago. And the taxes that we are seeing being levied upon people are all new taxes, and if anything, it's going to throttle us within an inch of our existence, and we are not ready to have this anymore. So several conversations have been taking place, and we're looking at the place of public participation in all of this and saying, you know what, it's about time. In my opinion, it was about time a decade ago, whereby every citizen is actually actively involved in what happens concerning their existence in this country, or in any country for that matter. There are jurisdictions where it happens. And so the question is, how active are you when it comes to making sure that your leaders, whom you have put in a position of representation, are actually representing you? Have they coalesced around the common voice and said, you know what, this we need to do? And I am not discussing or voting along party lines or leadership lines, but along the lines of the people. Are we seeing today that there has been a lot more participation and active participation in what is happening when it comes to the leadership of the country and the guidance that money and funds will actually give when it comes to an economic development of Kenya? Today, what will it yield is the question. And are people actually ready to deal with the consequences of not acting?
You know, what I'd like to know is how many members of Parliament have actually bothered to ask their constituents or gone through a process where they can with certainty say, I have spoken in this manner, I've had this public participation with my constituents, and this is what they have told me. How many? So that when they speak, they can say, look, I am speaking not as myself, I'm speaking as the person I am. I am a representative. And the people I represent have said this. So I am simply telling you what they would like to see. Not what I think they would like, or what I believe they would like, or what I'm going to tell you they have said they like and I haven't, but what, because the language people speak is not difficult to understand or to hear. And when people kick a fuss such as the one we have been witnessing with regards to this finance bill, it means this finance bill has received more attention than any finance bill in the history of this country.
Indeed, it has. So, look, CT, in 2023, when the finance bill was being debated in the manner in which it was, and, you know, because there was something specific that came in there, which was the housing levy. Is it a tax? Is it not a tax? And so that became the whole conversation. People went to court, abroad, it did not, you know, that happened. And so that grabbed the attention of very many people in 2023, as though this was the first time a finance bill had ever been introduced in Kenya. It is not. Every time there was a budget to be read, there is a finance bill. But it grabbed the attention of people because there were certain things that were happening simultaneously in Kenya at that time. That the economy had tanked, essentially. And at that time, there had just been a change of guard at the presidency. And at the same time, people were feeling, you know what, we really have gotten to the point where things are too tight. Fuel prices through the roof, coming off the back of COVID. There's a new president. And then now you're coming to tell us how you want to tax us a little bit more. Okay. So people were very, very involved in that conversation. Granted, I think people were also ignorantly involved, because in as much as it was rejected because it's charging us a little bit more, the nitty-gritty of it did not come to the fore. Today, in a year, I think we are now seeing people who are actively involved and with knowledge.
Yes.
And with understanding. of exactly what it means, where you have a 2% added on what you're already paying, a 5%, a 16%, a 6%. That what it actually means is that you have less in your pocket. But the overriding question here is government actually able to deliver services due to its people without raising taxes? Have we seen this done before?
Well, is that not the question that is being asked? But alongside it, there's the question of how sure is the government that raising taxes to the point where people's voices are rising higher than the taxes, how certain are you that this will ensure that you will collect more? Because the entire exercise is so that we can collect more, so that we can meet our obligations. And the question that is being asked, are we really going to be able to do it in this manner?
I think you have to ask if obligations are actually being met.
Yes, you have to ask that question.
Yeah.
Are we going to collect more, or will we end up collecting less? Because the exercises, we are told, they are purposed for that matter. And yet, I remember when we had this discussion, Eric was around, and I quoted the year 2021, the COVID period. And I said, KRA and the ministry that deals with finances that KRA belongs to came up with a raft of measures that actually decreased our taxes. KRA had a target of 1.8 trillion Kenyan shillings. They surpassed it. They hit 2 point something or the other. The following year, they had a target of, I think, 1.9. Again, they surpassed it. I'm simply saying this. We don't have to quote some other country. We just need to quote our own country and look at what it is. This isn't in the previous century, as I like saying. This is just the previous government. Uhuru was spoken to and he listened. This was the COVID period. Things were tough. KRA surpassed their target. The principal thing that they did was they lowered taxes, not raised them. The situation we are in is even worse than COVID. Worse in the sense that we have never been in a situation where whatever we collect, we have more than 3/4 of it going to pay taxes. I mean, going to pay the loans that we've accumulated. Yes.
Yeah.
So what remains is a small, tiny amount to meet the needs of the country.
I think there's an agreement across board. And that the fact of the matter is that if you want me to run the country, then I collect taxes from you, individuals, businesses. You pay to Caesar what is due. Caesar, in turn, is supposed to take this money or these resources that they've taxed you for, and is actually then supposed to make life bearable for you in the nation. So let's look at some of those things, all right? And I offer you 3 guesses as to what my first one is going to be in terms of what should the government have been doing and has not been doing for the last 5 years. Let's just look at it, for example.
You want me to take a guess?
Yeah.
Well, my first guess is this thing called capitation.
Okay. 1,000 points for you, CT. Do with them as you wish. Okay? Now, let's just take education, for example. The assumption is that if you collect taxes, that you're going to have certain things done in the country.
Yes.
Now, all the time, I mean, we hear until we're blue in the face, right? That we hear, after all, there are very many countries in other parts of the world where they are taxed 50% of their income. And we know that as a result of that, they're able to get things done. And I say, voila, that is a very good example. Thank you very much. You've given us an example of Finland, where they're taxed almost 53% of their income. But guess what? Never will there be a day where they will sit like this and the lights will go off. And it doesn't happen.
As for school?
Never will there be a day where parents will remove from their pocket even 1 krona, it's called krona, to pay school fees for their children until the time they turn 18. And even when they turn 18 and then they decide to go to university, never will there be a day where they will go to government funding for university and they say, can we get something? And government will tell them, no, try next year. It will never happen. Never will there be a day where there will be a pothole on the road and they'll have to beg, and the pothole goes from pothole and then it becomes crater, and then crater becomes ocean in the middle of the road. Yes. It will never happen. Never will there be a day where somebody in this same country takes a card for health and walks to the hospital and they say, Leo, okay, they won't say Leo, in the language that they speak. They'll say, today, we don't have Brufen, we don't have painkillers. It can never happen.
In fact, today, we can't accept your card.
It will not happen. We cannot accept your card because so-and-so has not paid. Never will there be a day whereby the country is hungry and you have to import food from outside because they don't have. No, it won't happen. Now, on top of that, they even have what you call a sovereign fund. That the money has even been too much that they said, you know what, let's take some of this money and put it somewhere in a reserve.
Save it for our citizens.
Save it for our citizens.
Meaning the country has a savings account.
So that right now, they say it's Norway that they want to use as an example, or Finland. Right now, today, Norway's sovereign fund, reserve fund, is in surplus of billions of dollars. That means if the people of Norway should stand up today and say, we're not doing again, we want our money, all of you can be paid $4,000, everybody be going to do what you want to do.
More, it's more. Given their
of course,
population,
I'm just giving you an example because their population is small.
Yes.
Are they on crack? Is it narcotics, hard drugs that they've been consuming that allows them to do these things? No, it is not. I prefer to you, my friend CT. It is because they've done what? They've been prudent in the collection and usage of these taxes. So when we want to compare and say they are taxed 53%, we also want to compare and say, but guess what they did with the taxes that they actually collect?
Look at what they do with the 47% that we give them. Or is it 53 they collect?
Jermaine.
So that we remain with the 47? Okay, but look at the 53.
So when you compare all of those things, so tax me 53%. Imagine, please tax me 53%. However, I will not pay school fees. I even have some extra money somewhere. I say, even if I am suffering today, government has my money. That I will go to hospital, I don't have to remove money. I won't do harambe up and down because somebody is sick. No. My children will go to school until they reach university for free. That I will work and then I come home, there's internet, I put on the light, it goes on. It never goes off. If it goes off, they're even apologizing to me that we are sorry. On the 17th of June at 9:46 a.m. until 9:47 and 30, the lights went off. It was because of 1, 2, 3. That's why they went off. We are very sorry. Can you imagine?
And on
such
top of
things
that,
actually happen.
We are going to deduct this amount from the bill because we did not provide you with electricity.
We did not provide you with electricity for 1 minute and 30 seconds. We will now add it on your bill or deduct it from your bill so you don't have to pay us when the bill comes tomorrow. That you wake up in the morning like this and there's gas that's supplied to the pipe in your house, that if you don't pay, it's shut off from somewhere in the city. That's what we're talking about if you want to make a comparison. But now we want to compare blindly and say, oh, they collect tax and this is what happens. No, my friend, compare from A to Z.
But you know what then happens? You then can focus on what you call nation building. You can focus on how you can develop talent. You then focus on innovation. You then focus on all these wonderful things we keep talking about because there'll be no diversion. No one is going to call you for Harambe. No WhatsApp because somebody has your number or somebody whom you don't know has your number. And clearly they have a need and they'd like you to help. That need, it's usually school fees, health. That one taken care of. Now, we have a plan where we're being told that this will be taken care of. The Social Health Authority tells us that they're coming up with a scheme where all this will be taken care of. And we're saying, really? This NHIF that we are doing away with actually worked. And it worked for a very long time.
I didn't even finish my education story.
I was merely punctuating it. Please continue.
Now, let's bring it to this side where you want to make a comparison and say certain things we collect tax. In fact, so Kenya is not even collecting enough tax. I put it to you. It's okay. Let's just take education. Then we're going to go on a break and look at traffic and we'll come back and look at some of these other things like health that you're talking about. I said we are going to midterm next week. This is second term in the year 2024. The first term capitation, you've not finished sending it. And you've said that soon we'll do it. Soon has not come yet. And here we are talking about money that was budgeted for. The year is coming to an end. The year is coming to an end on the 30th of June. You have not sent capitation and you're expecting that 100% capitation will be sent. This is money that comes directly from taxes, my friend. This is not development money.
And this tax we're speaking about.
This tax that we are speaking about that you people collect up and down and be shouting and making noise, we cannot hear word, is this education, that's where it goes to. So now that capitation that you've not sent, so where did the tax go? In fact, you know what? This Occupy, they should just answer that one question. I'm telling you, if they were able to answer that one question, I think people can even rest and say, we will not occupy again. We'll come and occupy another day. Answer the one question. Money that was budgeted for. This is a direct payment from tax, education, capitation money. Big budget item. Where did the money go? For the last 5 years, where you're owing 63 billion shillings in capitation, where did it go? Where did it go? So now this story that you want to come and tell us, they're collecting taxes where jurisdiction 53%. This one that you collected, that you were supposed to pay for, you budgeted it. Where, 3-4 words, where did it go? Add a question mark for good measure. Where did it go? Because you're telling us we tax so high so that we can do things in the country. Okay, sour. This one that you're supposed to be doing, where did it go? Should I say it in my language? I can't. Where did it go? Let's not even talk about the other things that you want to say development. Okay, roads that you want to be built. I'll give one example. Here. I keep giving the example and I'll keep giving it. There's a road that has been under construction for 15 years. Enterprise Road.
Enterprise Road.
Somebody delivered a baby. Yeah? 15 years ago. That child is going to Form 4 next year. That road is still like that. 15 years. That also is a direct benefactor of tax money. Infrastructure in the country. It's not development unless you have a development partner that says they want to build Mombasa-Nairobi highway. The people at the back, I don't know if they're hearing what I'm saying. The money that is supposed to go directly towards certain things that comes from taxes, where is it going?
You'd be told it wasn't enough. You see, when we collected. Then we paid our debts. After we paid our debts, not much of it remained. But see, that debt payment, what is it? The equivalent of what?
I'm not even, of the 1 billion new taxes that are being proposed, ECO, even the ones that they've shut down, which were ridiculous from the very beginning. If you can't explain it, it doesn't make sense. That's one thing I've been told. If you, the originator of the thing, can't explain it and it doesn't make sense to you, have no business putting it on other people. That's one. But for me, the question is very simple. That if you have a responsibility to collect taxes from your people, you also are born with the responsibility then to ensure that the things that you said you were going to do with them actually come about. But here we are in a situation where you are then levying more taxes on your people, and the ones that you said you were going to do before, you have not done. I don't care if you were in government a year ago. I don't care if you were not in government 10 years ago. The principle remains that you, as the guardian of the funds and resources of the people, in terms of what you're meant to do, you bear the responsibility, whether you're here today, whether you were there 10 years ago. And the question must be asked, what did you do? Who does an audit of the budget? And then comes and presents to the people later and said, actually, we had told you we were going to spend 600 billion shillings on education. And here we spent 600 billion shillings. Who does that? Who comes and tells people this is actually what happened? That we said we were going to charge an eco levy of 6% or however much. And this is the money that we collected from that particular levy in the year July 2023 to June 30th, 2024. And here is the money that we actually collected from it. And here is what we actually did. Who does that? Who shares that information? When we said that we were going to collect 600 billion shillings and we're going to apply it to education, and we have a gaping hole looking right at us in terms of what happens with capitation, who asks the question? Who does an audit and says, actually, yes, from road maintenance, we did 1, 2, 3, or from the collection of taxes that we did with business, it was then applied here and we can see that education then was funded. Who does that? Who asks the question? Who does the due diligence and presents it to the people? Who? Where does that all come from if there's ever an explanation? If it doesn't make you mad, it should. If it doesn't make you question, it should. If you don't have an answer, you should demand for one, and you have the right to do that as a people. And I think that's the agenda that we try to push and say, you know what, you should ask the question and you should ask it until you get an answer. If you don't get an answer, for me, the solution is very simple. That the individuals who are not able to provide you with an answer, by the very fact that they were put there for a position of representation, have no business being there. And you have all the business in making sure that they either are accountable or they take a seat. For me, That is where I stand. And I don't think that there can be anything less that we have to get to the point whereby we're taking this bull by the horns. Otherwise, things are actually going to get messier than they already are. So for me, the questions are very clear. What happens to that which you've collected and we can see that nothing has happened? Before we even get to health, which is a big issue here, what happens to that which you've collected in the past and we can't see for it? Where does that go, CT?
Well, we have this... we ask the questions, and correctly so, where does the money go? And, well, a lot of the times we may not know where the money goes, but there are times we do know. Because if the money is available and you're told a certain project will begin, we make certain assumptions. If our assumptions are wrong, then there are people who know more about these things should correct our assumptions and tell us, actually, when we say it was being done, doesn't mean it's going to be done tomorrow. And when we say it's budgeted for, it doesn't mean the money is in the bank. It means we're looking for the money. Whatever the case may be, we need to be told. However, we are in this unfortunate situation where we seem to see unfolding before our very eyes mistakes that were made by a previous government. Because all these debts that we're paying, we've always had debts, but debts grew to a level that we'd never seen before in the Uhuru era. Now, this government seems to be set to outdo the Uhuru era in accumulating debt, and I mean literally, because they have accumulated debts very fast and very furiously. Now, what that means is that even when we talk about collecting taxes, even when we talk, let's say we collect 4 trillion.
Okay.
Let's say we collect 4
That's
trillion.
a nice number, all right.
It's a nice number, okay? What then will we do? And when we pay these debts, I want to assume that they reduce over time.
Yeah, I mean, if I owe you 100 shillings today and I pay you 20 shillings,
yes.
Then
yes.
tomorrow I only
yes.
owe you 80 shillings, right?
I assume
I assume that's the way it works.
Yes,
yeah.
and if we've been paying these debts for some time, there were debts that came due recently, we understand that.
Yeah.
Surely they ought to reduce.
Yeah.
There were debts that we're going to pay as a one-off. We borrowed a certain amount but once we pay it, it's supposed to have been gone, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay, now, what I find confusing, I'm told by those who know better than I do that our economic status improved. We became something that we were not before. We stopped being the third world banana republic that we were. We became a middle income something or the other.
Middle income something country developed.
Yes. Now, as a result of that, I'm told that we were not eligible to get certain concession loans, etc., etc. But I find this strange because even now, after having been told, I see us getting concession loans. So, what was it that I was being told before and what is it that I'm seeing now? Okay. Now, concession loans, by their very nature, are cheap. By their very nature, you have a lovely moratorium. You pay only after a certain period of time, 10. But the percentage that you're charged, if we're to go by what we're told by the Japanese ambassador to Kenya,
it's ridiculous.
0.1%. I mean, it's a question that one must ask all the time. Why then do we keep going to get these expensive loans, which essentially are commercial loans, dollar denominated and at very interesting rates? Now, I'm asking these questions because we seem to have a financial situation that we could have gotten ourselves out of by simply not getting into it, but now we've gotten into it and getting out of them. And the word here, them, is all these debts. It becomes more and more difficult when you look at how the shilling behaves towards the dollar, and then when you look at how we still continue to borrow more.
It must be asked. And this must be asked within the arena of the understanding that Kenya, I'm not talking about another country right now, I'm saying Kenya, which has been prescribed in the Constitution being the guiding law of the country, that this is what you're going to do. When you said that Kenya is, when it was Madaraka Day, when you said that Kenya now will be an entity unto itself and independence and sovereignty now has been achieved, right? You then said, let us come up with a law, right? Let us even put it down on paper about how then we will be governed. And people who will come into positions of authority and leadership will be bound by this. And we, the people, will also be bound by the thing, right? In some jurisdictions, they don't write it down. But Kenya chose to write it down.
Like Britain, they didn't write it down.
Britain didn't write it down. It was like an agreement. We said,
an understanding, and then there's a culture, custom, tradition, all these things, yes.
Right. So Kenya has a written down constitution. It makes it maybe, one would say, more established, because you can do what? You can refer to it in the future. Just in case you're off your rocker and you didn't really get what it's supposed to say. You have it written down. Now, we even came back, and in 2010, after doing some work for a couple of years, they said, you know what? Now, this is the abridged version. This is the new improved version, and this is how we want it to be all-encompassing. In that very document, it is clear, and it says, Kenya, if you want to borrow money from anybody, there are only two circumstances under which you can do that. Number one is for development. You want to build a massive highway that goes from Malaba to Mombasa.
Into the Indian Ocean.
Through the Indian Ocean. If you wanted to have aqueducts and all of those things, you say, that's what we're going to borrow for. We're going to do it. Under those circumstances, then you can borrow. The second is when we need to meet a deficit of budget, right? And we just don't have enough. We can now borrow to connect until the next year, which has been done before. It is under those two circumstances where borrowing for Kenya as an entity may happen. Now, if such kind of massive borrowing happens and that kind of money is injected into the economy, I keep saying you will feel it. Like now, sometimes there's a tremor here in this building. You feel it, Abi.
Yes,
something just does keep small. You feel it. You feel it. If the borrowing, the kind of money that we've been seeing has been borrowed by Kenya were to enter this economy, you would see it, Abi.
And forget seeing, you'd feel it.
Okay, you would feel that
and then
shake.
and then you would see it.
After you feel it, then you will, and then you see, okay, things are flowing, things are happening, etc., etc. Now, connect the two. Borrowing here, in those two circumstances, when you're allowed to, one must ask the question why that did not happen. On this side, all of these monies that are being taxed today, 70% of that collection goes towards paying for these same loans that we are talking about. But then, mon ami, I must ask, where is this development that has taken place for which this expenditure occurred? Let's just take the last 10 years. Don't tell me the SGR. Tell me something else.
Tell you something else, what?
And now, where the money went? Yeah, that's my question today. Have you noticed? I'm like a dog with a bone.
Development.
Which one? Where did it go? The kind of money that we're talking about in the trillions that's being paid back as loans, whereby this money then that's being collected, where you're being taxed, echo here, digital here, bread here, packaging here, etc., here and there, is not coming to fix your roads. It's not coming to educate your children. It's not coming to build schools. It's not coming to fund SHA and SHIF. It's not coming to make sure that your children can go to school free of charge until 18. It's not fixing the potholes in roads. 70% of that money is going towards payback of loans for which you cannot see what was done. It's witchcraft.
You know when you
I'm
say
sorry, it's juju.
Voodoo.
There's no other way to describe the thing. I'm sorry.
When you look at those amounts, really, they are colossal.
Hey.
And they're sort of amounts that ought to change the country significantly. That is the simple reality. But there is a term that I have mentioned here before, and I'm going to mention it again. It's called revisionism. What I marvel at is how it is people who are in leadership positions, political leadership, they and their cronies, imagine that a time won't come when they will no longer be those positions, because that time will come. You don't even have to tarry a while. It'll come in the by and by. When it comes, people then look and they say, this happened now, but we're in a position to determine this because we have documentation for it. How is it that people can speak so knowledgeably about the Kibaki era? Well, because of the revisionism. We look back and we say, you know, this particular leader, this is what they did. At the time, we may not have agreed with it, but this is what we saw again. Not what we heard. Now, here we're talking about what we hear, but the seeing bit doesn't quite connect. Now, what we see instead is people giving large sums of money at Harambes. You know, there's something called a lifestyle auditor. I don't know whether they're aware of this or they forget it from time to time, because at some point someone's going to ask the question, we know what you earn, we know which businesses you run, we know how much you pay and if how much you earn from those businesses, if you have them. And KRA can give us an even better account because they know how much you pay. So if that's what you pay in terms of taxes, where do you actually get this other money to do everything that you do? Now, I'm saying this because when you look into the future and you look at the rear view mirror and you look at the past, you are revising, you're looking at it again, it tells a very different story. Because remember the borrowing and the ceilings that we went to, and they're going to Parliament so that they can increase our capacity to borrow, were based on the understanding of what you're saying we are going to develop. We have this 2030 vision. We have this 2040 vision, okay? But we're in 2024. And in 2024, the bit of that vision that's supposed to happen now isn't really very visible. So we have a problem there. And we're asking for visibility because it must be somewhere which we are perhaps not privy to, and those who are privy to it might point us in the direction so that we can actually see and know that, sorry. We were not looking in that direction.
We didn't actually think.
Why didn't you tell us earlier so that we could look in that direction and we can see? I recently went to Marsabit because a beloved in-law had passed away. A road that I'm told from one section, let's say yes, from Isiolo to get to say Merile or Laisames, it took you hours, because the road was completely higgledy-piggledy. Now, when you find a road that is tarmac, you know, everything changes simply because, and you then understand why you are told infrastructure is a foundation on which development is built. Because it forms part of the infrastructure.
100%.
Many other things are now possible. Movement is possible. People are able to traverse the terrain. People are able to do things. Things were previously not possible becomes easy. So, let's do a little revising and ask ourselves. When you look at the government of Uhuru, which was after the Kibaki government, they were fortunate enough to have inherited a certain momentum. Did they increase the momentum or did they dim it? This particular government...
increase or decrease?
Yeah, precisely. Now that is the question. Now we look at this particular government and we look at what they inherited from the Uhuru government. We're told empty coffers. Governments are supposed to have empty coffers because government is supposed to collect money so that they use it. Government is not a SACCO. It's not a saving society. Government is supposed to get money and they're supposed to use it. So, again, we judge and say, right, it's 2 years down the line. We can judge. What do we see? Now, what we see now is a precursor for what we are likely to see in the future. Okay? And the future, unfortunately, is coming fast and furious for this particular government. You know why? Whatever was accumulated in the previous government, which wasn't sorted out, came into this government.
It's lobbed on to the next.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And now when they pile on their own, then they have set in motion certain things. Some of them you can understand and even control. Some you cannot. An empty belly you can't control. Unmet expectations you can't control. Children who cannot go to school because their needs have not been met, you cannot control. The price of things cannot be controlled. The cost of living, people don't know whether they're going to live tomorrow, eat tomorrow. If that is the constant reality, the outcome is something you will not control.
And then, I don't blame them. Just in the last hour, CT, we had a conversation about mental health. And we were asking the question, so when is something going to actually be done about it? Now, these things that we speak of, and I'm going to keep connecting it to this finance bill or to taxes and its collection and to the responsibility that governments have to actually make sure that which you demand of your people, are you actually the vanguard over these resources in a responsible manner? And my friend, if you are not ready to answer questions, you have no business being in a position of leadership.
No.
If you are not ready, or you feel a certain type of way, you feel uncomfortable when people ask you, what have you done? How have you done it? And the money that you have been given, how did you spend it? If you are not comfortable asking those three questions, you have no business being in a position of leadership. You shouldn't have taken the responsibility. You should have, even when they voted you in and you were not ready to answer those questions, you should have said, thank you very much for your vote, but I'm not doing it again. Let somebody else take it. If you're not ready to be embarrassed, if you're not ready to be asked, if you're not ready to be held accountable, you have no business being in that position. Mon ami, you don't. So here we are, and they say we're going to have to connect it. These are brick and mortar issues, CT. They're outlined again. Remember the guiding law that you wrote down in terms of the Constitution?
Mm-hmm.
You wrote it down. And I say this, we speak for Kenya, but we speak for other countries. You speak for Nigeria, where things are shambles is the big brother of what's happening today. So we ask ourselves the question, if you're not ready to answer, you have no business being in a position of leadership.
Look for another line of work.
Look for something else. To go and do something else. Run your own private business where you answer to yourself. But now you have the lives of 55 million people in your hands, in your mind, when it comes to making a decision. You have to. These are brick and mortar issues, CT, education, health, infrastructure. So if that cannot be handled, CT, do you really believe that somebody is then going to say, let me allocate resources to make sure that those who are living with disabilities are taken care of? That those then who are living with mental health issues are taken care of? Do you really think that what people consider to be the not so brick and mortar issues are handled? Do you really imagine that a world like that will come into existence where those things are taken care of, if these ones, which are outlined, black and white, you're not able to take care of, and you're telling people that you want to collect taxes every day? It's juju.
You know, let me quote, having made the first mistake, this government seems obliged to make even greater mistakes, to pile them on. Now, they will be judged harshly, and rightfully so, because you cannot get yourself elected on a platform of phenomenal change which people believe is coming their way, and then they get the complete opposite.
It's time to say no.
Now, the question that then arises with our members of parliament and our elected leaders, when we talk mental health and we have all these dire situations, then you read headlines like 2027 battle, MPs lay siege to governors. Yet, God Almighty.
Exactly.
Where should the mental health discussion actually begin? Because is this really a priority, honestly speaking?
It isn't. I said the ones that are written in black and white are not a priority, and they're not being done in the manner in which they ought to be. When will we get to the others? And so you need to actually sit up and actually take this thing by the horns and deal with it as it ought to be. Until you get there and you're able to answer the questions and being held accountable, then it's child's play, and we're playing around with it. And we're coming to the top of the hour, but you know what? A lot of work has to be done.
The sovereign have to take back their power. This is what it gets to.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.